I walked into my house after 6 months of deployment, thinking I'd be greeted by my wife, my home, and my life. Instead, I walked in on something that changed everything. It was a quiet evening when I returned. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the house. I had just completed a grueling 6-month deployment overseas. I was tired, yes, but I couldn't wait to get home. Home meant comfort. It meant peace. It meant her. I opened the door, eager to surprise my wife, Sarah. I expected to hear her voice calling out, maybe hear the clinking of dinner plates, or the sound of her laughing. But none of that happened. The house was eerily silent. I called out, "Sarah?" But there was no answer. I shrugged it off, figuring she was in the kitchen or maybe out back. I tossed my bag onto the couch, kicked off my boots, and walked further into the house. And that's when I saw him, a man, sitting on my couch, in my living room, with his feet up. I froze for a moment, unsure of what I was seeing. I thought maybe I was hallucinating, the exhaustion from the long flight messing with my mind. But no, the man was real. He was real and very much in my house. My blood ran cold. "Who the hell are you?" I asked, my voice suddenly very low, trying to control the anger rising in my chest. The stranger stood up slowly, not even fazed by my presence. He wasn't nervous, not the least bit intimidated. "I'm Mike," he said with a shrug. "Sarah's been expecting you. She's in the back." Mike? Sarah? I didn't even know who the hell this guy was. My stomach dropped. Something was horribly, horribly wrong. I walked past him, my mind racing. I needed answers. I needed to know what was going on. When I got to the back of the house, I saw Sarah. She was standing by the window, looking out into the yard, like everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. It wasn't even close. I walked in, my heart pounding, and I asked, "Who the hell is Mike?" She turned around slowly, her face going pale. For a second, I could see her processing something. A lie? A reason? Something to explain the man in my house? But there was nothing. She just stood there, her eyes filled with something I couldn't place. Mike's just a friend," she said, her voice faltering. "He's been helping me around the house, while you've been gone." I tried to hold it together, but the pieces started to fit into place, and I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me. I had been away, sacrificing for my country, and meanwhile, she was letting a stranger into our home? I tried to breathe through it. I tried to stay calm. "Helping you," I repeated, my voice cracking. "Sarah, I've been gone for 6 months. What the hell is going on? Why is he in our house?" She bit her lip, not meeting my eyes. "I needed someone. Okay?" It was hard. I didn't want to feel alone. Her voice trailed off. Alone. That was her excuse? My heart sank. I wanted to scream, to yell, to demand answers, but I just stood there, frozen in disbelief. Mike, the stranger in my house, the man Sarah had invited into our space, into my life. But there was something more than just the shock. Something deeper, colder, more dangerous that I hadn't figured out yet. What happens next? You won't believe the twists that follow, and trust me, it gets even more intense from here. Don't forget to hit that like button, comment, and subscribe to follow the rest of my journey. Have you ever been betrayed like this? Let me know in the comments below. I couldn't process what I was hearing. Alone? She needed someone? I had been the one out there risking my life while she had been... What? Letting a stranger into our home? My home? I wanted to scream, to demand answers. But I just stood there, my hands clenched into fists at my sides, trying to keep my composure. "Sarah, what's really going on?" I asked, my voice low but filled with anger. "You let him in here, in our home, and you think that's okay?" She avoided my gaze, her eyes darting to the floor. She was quiet for a long time, and when she finally spoke, her words were shaky. "It's not like that. You're making it sound worse than it is, Mark. Mike's just been helping me. You know how much I've had to handle alone while you've been gone. I didn't want to feel like I was living in a ghost house. Couldn't believe it. I was fighting battles overseas, And this was how she chose to fill the silence? By letting a complete stranger into our life? Our marriage? How long has this been going on? I demanded. The words were spilling out now, faster than I could stop them. How long have you been seeing him behind my back? She flinched at the words behind my back. That was enough. I didn't need to hear more. I knew everything I needed to know. It was all sinking in now. The betrayal. The lies. Sarah opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. She wasn't sorry, not really. She was just trying to avoid the fallout. Her excuses were shallow, just a last-ditch attempt to hold onto some semblance of control. But I could see it now, the guilt, the shame. It was there, and it wasn't going anywhere. Do you think this is okay? Do you think Mike just helps you? I continued, my voice getting louder with each word. Where does it stop, Sarah? What else have you been hiding from me? She stood there, completely still. I could tell she had nothing left to say, no explanation that could save her now. The look on her face, guilt, fear, maybe even a little bit of regret, said it all. She had pushed me too far this time. Mark, please, she whispered. I never meant for this to happen. I was lonely. I thought I could handle it, but then everything just got so complicated. Lonely? That was the excuse? Couldn't believe it. She hadn't just made a mistake. She had made choices, conscious decisions to betray me, to let a stranger into our lives, into my home, all while I was away doing everything I could to provide for her. You thought you could handle it? I repeated, my voice growing colder. You thought what? That I wouldn't find out? That I wouldn't care? She looked like she was going to say something, but I wasn't going to let her. Couldn't. Every second that I spent listening to her try to justify what she'd done was a second too long. I took a deep breath, standing up straight and looking her in the eyes. I'm not going to play this game with you, Sarah. This ends now. I turned to walk away, but just as I reached the door, I heard her voice crack behind me. Mark, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Please, just let me explain. But I didn't turn around. I didn't want to hear the explanation. It didn't matter anymore. The trust was broken. The betrayal was done. As I stepped outside, I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. I had no idea what Emily was thinking, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I couldn't get the image of Mike sitting on my couch out of my head. The calm, almost casual way he had been lounging in my home. Like it was his. My home. The home I had worked so hard for. The home that was supposed to be my sanctuary. And Sarah? She let him in without a second thought. I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to let this slide. I wasn't about to sit idly by while she played the victim. She had crossed a line. And now it was time to make sure she understood the consequences of her actions. Over the next few days, I did what I knew best. I observed. I watched from the sidelines, not letting her see that I was on to her. Every time she tried to speak to me, I kept my distance. Every time she came up with another excuse, I just nodded, pretending to believe her. But inside, I was already making my move. I knew Sarah. I knew she'd try to fix things, try to convince me that she was sorry, that she made a mistake. But I wasn't interested in that. I needed to find a way to make her feel the weight of her betrayal. And I wasn't going to do it with emotion. I was going to do it with precision, with strategy. I went through our old files, digging through documents I hadn't touched in years. I found the contracts, the bills, the tax returns. And then I found what I was looking for, Sarah's password to our joint account. She thought I wouldn't figure it out, that I wouldn't go digging. But I knew her well enough to guess. I logged in, my fingers typing faster than my heart was beating. It was time to take action. I started transferring funds from the joint account into a private account that I controlled. Just a little bit here and there. Enough to make a statement, but not enough for her to notice immediately. Small leaks can sink a ship, but that wasn't enough. I needed more than just money. I needed to hit where it would hurt most, her reputation. I contacted my lawyer. This wasn't just about me getting what was mine. I wanted to make sure she couldn't walk away without facing the consequences of what she had done. I wanted to make sure the world knew what kind of person she really was. "We can file for defamation," my lawyer said, his voice cold and professional. "We can make sure she doesn't just lose this case. We'll make sure she's held responsible for her actions. But you have to make it clear that you're done, that you're no longer the man who just accepts being lied to." I felt a cold rush of satisfaction. This was my chance to hit back. This was my moment to make sure Sarah paid for every single lie. The next time Sarah tried to apologize, I gave her no room to speak. She came over, acting like everything was normal, but I knew what was coming. She was ready to play the "I'm sorry, I made a mistake" card, but I wasn't having it. "Sarah," I said, cutting her off before she could even start, "you don't get to apologize. Not after what you did. Not after everything you've taken from me." She looked shocked, but I could see it in her eyes, fear. She was afraid, and she should have been. "I don't care about your excuses anymore," I continued. "I don't care about your apologies. What I care about is making sure you understand that you can't get away with this. You don't get to betray me and walk away without consequences. I'm done." She opened her mouth to respond, but I stood up, cutting her off again. "I've already made my decisions. I've already contacted my lawyer, and we're filing everything. I'm taking everything back, and you'll never hurt me again." Her face twisted in disbelief, and for the first time in a long while, I saw real panic in her eyes. She knew she had lost. She knew she had no way out now, and it felt so good to finally be in control again. The days after my confrontation with Sarah were strangely quiet, but I knew that she was feeling the weight of everything I had said. I wasn't giving her a chance to make things right, and for the first time I felt like I was the one in control. But the quiet didn't last. I had already started moving forward with my plan, and now it was time to turn the tables even further. I reached out to my lawyer again, wanting to make sure everything was set in stone. I was no longer just fighting for a fair divorce. I was making sure that Sarah and Jared faced real consequences for what they had done. They needed to understand that their betrayal had gone too far, and they weren't just going to walk away with no repercussions. "We're filing for defamation," my lawyer said over the phone, his voice firm. "We're going to make sure that Emily's actions aren't just forgotten, and we'll also seek financial restitution for all the money she took from you." That felt good. Finally, after months of being the victim, I was going to take control and make sure they paid the price. That night, as I sat in my office going over paperwork, I got a call from Emily. My phone buzzed, and I stared at it for a moment before answering. I already knew what this was going to be about. She had no more excuses left, but I knew she was going to try to salvage what little dignity she had left. "Mark, can we just talk?" she asked, her voice sounding strained. I didn't hesitate. "What's there left to talk about, Sarah? You've already done enough. I'm done talking. I'm done negotiating. You're going to pay for what you did." Her voice wavered. "Please, I'm sorry for everything. I didn't mean to hurt you, Mark." I almost laughed. "Sorry?" She thought a simple apology could fix what she had done. "You didn't mean to hurt me?" I repeated, my voice steady but cold. "You stole from me, you destroyed our marriage, and you thought I wouldn't find out. No, sorry doesn't fix that. You'll pay for it, just like you deserve." She was silent for a moment, and I could hear the crack in her voice. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to accept that you lost," I said. "You can't keep running. You can't hide behind excuses anymore. You made your bed, and now you'll lie in it." A few days later, the first real blow came. I got an anonymous message, a tip-off that Emily was planning to sell the house. She was trying to get rid of everything she could before the final ruling came in. But she didn't know that I had already put a stop to that. I contacted my lawyer and instructed him to freeze any assets she might try to liquidate, including the house. She wouldn't be able to sell it without facing legal repercussions. When she found out, it was pure panic. I could almost feel the heat of her frustration from miles away. She had no idea what was coming next. The next week, I received another call from her. This time, she wasn't asking to talk or apologize. She was begging. "Mark, I don't know what to do anymore," she said, her voice cracking. "I can't sell the house. I can't move. You've ruined everything. I didn't say a word. I let the silence stretch between us. You're right, Sarah, I finally said coldly. You've ruined everything. And now you're going to pay the price for it. You don't get to just walk away. The following month was a blur of paperwork, court hearings, and constant back and forth with Emily's lawyers. But I wasn't worried anymore. I knew the outcome. I knew I had already won. It wasn't about the house. It wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. About making sure that no one ever thought they could take advantage of me again. And Emily? She was losing. Slowly, painfully, but surely. She had tried to pull every trick in the book, but it was too late. She was facing the consequences of her actions, and for the first time I saw her crack. The days following the legal maneuver felt strangely satisfying. Emily thought she was in control, still trying to save face, but deep down, she was beginning to see the truth. I had the upper hand now. The plan I had set into motion was working. I could feel the pressure on her mounting every time I spoke with her lawyer, every time I made another move to tighten the noose. But as much as I enjoyed the feeling of control, I knew it wasn't over yet. This was just the beginning of the consequences for her actions, and I was determined to see it through. One evening, I received a call from my lawyer. The news wasn't surprising, but it still felt good to hear it. We've got the final verdict, he said. The court has ruled in your favor. All assets are to be returned to you, including the house and the funds from the account. A sense of calm washed over me. I had been expecting it, but hearing the confirmation still felt like a victory. Emily and Jared couldn't escape the consequences now. But the best part? Emily's lawyer, who had been stalling and trying to negotiate, was left with no choice but to accept the ruling. The truth was out in the open now. There was no going back. The next day, Emily showed up at my door. I knew it was coming. She had no other option but to try one last time to make me believe her story. When I opened the door, her face was pale, her eyes tired. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Mark," she said, her voice shaky. "I just want to talk. Can we please sit down and figure this out? We can work this out, I know we can." I looked at her, standing there in front of me, the woman who had torn apart everything I had worked for. The woman who had betrayed me in the worst way. The woman who had stolen from me and tried to move on with my best friend. "I've heard enough from you, Sarah," I said, my voice calm but firm. "There's nothing left to talk about. I'm done." Her face fell. She reached out as if to grab my arm, but I stepped back, avoiding her touch. "Please, just listen to me," she begged. "I'm sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you." I shook my head, not even sure if I should feel sympathy anymore. "You should have thought about that before you started lying, before you let him into our life. You betrayed me, Sarah. You don't get to fix this." She dropped her head, tears starting to well in her eyes. But I wasn't moved. She had made her choice. Now it was time to face the consequences. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of finalizing paperwork, dealing with the logistics of taking back what was mine, and making sure Emily understood that there was no escape from the reality she had created. The divorce was finalized, and everything was transferred back into my name. But then, just as I thought things couldn't get any worse for her, I received another piece of news that was both shocking and oddly satisfying. Jared, the man who had been at the heart of this betrayal, was facing his own fallout. His job had terminated him, his family had cut ties, and the public backlash had been overwhelming. The affair, the stolen money, everything, it all came crashing down on him. And the best part? He tried to reach out to me. He called. He texted. He even left a voicemail. But I didn't respond. He had destroyed any chance of our friendship ever being repaired. The real blow came when I saw them both, Emily and Jared, trying to rebuild their lives, this time apart, but still holding on to the wreckage they'd created. Emily tried to salvage whatever she could, but no one was buying her story anymore. As for me, I was moving on. I was finally free from the lies, the pain, the betrayal. I had taken back what was mine, and now it was time to move forward. The weeks that followed were the quietest I had felt in a long time. The chaos of everything was finally starting to settle, But there was still one thing that nagged at me. The feeling that I wasn't done yet. I had taken back my life. I had the house, the car, and the money that Sarah had stolen. I had exposed Jared and Emily for the lies they'd lived. But there was still one more step in this process. One last thing to make sure that everything I had lost would never be a part of my life again. The one thing I wanted most: closure. It wasn't easy seeing Sarah's face again, even after everything that had happened. But I knew it had to happen. She had tried to manipulate and deceive me for months. But now it was time for her to truly understand the depth of what she had done. I called her. The words felt heavy in my mouth, but I needed to do it. I needed to hear her apologize and admit, at least for herself, that she had destroyed everything. "Sarah," I said when she picked up, my voice steady but firm, "we need to talk. I've made my decisions. Now, it's your turn to face the consequences." She was quiet for a moment, and I could hear her breathing shakily on the other end. "What do you want, Mark?" she asked, her voice soft. "I want you to understand what you've done," I replied. "You took everything from me. You destroyed our life. You lied to me and betrayed me, and now I'm making sure you never forget it." She started to speak, but I wasn't interested in hearing more excuses. "No, Sarah, this isn't about your guilt. This is about justice. I've already taken the steps to make sure you don't get away with this." Her voice cracked. "What do you want from me, Mark? I never meant for it to happen like this. It was a mistake. Please. Your mistake cost me everything," I said, my voice low but unwavering. "And now you'll have to deal with the consequences." The next few days Sarah tried calling. She left me messages, sent texts, and even came to the house once, begging me to hear her out. But I didn't respond. Couldn't. There was nothing left for me to say to her. In the end, she had no choice but to deal with the fallout of her actions. She lost everything. The shame of what she'd done weighed on her. Jared, too, was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. He'd lost his job, his reputation, and every ounce of respect he once had. But I wasn't celebrating their downfall. I wasn't feeling satisfaction from watching them suffer. I was simply moving on. They had chosen their path, and now it was time for me to move forward with mine. A few months later, the final part of my plan was complete. I was sitting in a cafe, sipping coffee and looking over the final documents. I had worked hard to make sure that every aspect of my life was restored. My finances, my home, my peace of mind. I thought back to the person I was before all of this. I was angry, broken, confused. I couldn't see a way out. But now I was stronger, more resilient, more in control. The most satisfying part was knowing that I had done it on my own terms. I had taken everything back, and I had done it with intelligence, with strategy, and with patience. I didn't need to act out of rage. I didn't need to scream. I just needed to use my head. And that's exactly what I did. It had been a few months since the dust settled, but there was still one thing left that kept lingering in the back of my mind. How much would Emily and Jared actually face the consequences of what they had done? I had won in the courtroom. I had reclaimed everything that was taken from me. But the final question still lingered. Were they truly going to face the music? I didn't care about their financial ruin. I didn't care about how much they lost or what they had to sacrifice. What I cared about was making sure they truly understood what they had done to me. Not just in their bank accounts, but in their lives. It wasn't just about justice, it was about making sure they would never forget that betrayal. That's when I got the call. It was Jared. I hadn't heard from him in weeks. But now he was calling me, and just from the sound of his voice, I could tell he was desperate. "Mark," he said, his voice strained. "I know I messed up, man. I know what I did was wrong. But I need you to understand. I didn't think it would go this far. Please, I need to talk to you." I could barely believe my ears. After everything he'd done, he was calling me? Trying to make peace? I was calm, but my words were sharp. "Jared, you don't get to apologize. You don't get to fix what you broke. You thought you could betray me and walk away without consequences. But I've already taken care of that, and now it's too late. I'm done with you." There was silence on the other end. I could almost hear him choking on his words. "You'll pay for this, Jared. You'll never have the life you thought you would. You don't get to play the victim after what you did. You can't fix it now. It's over." I hung up before he could say anything more. The guilt in his voice didn't matter to me anymore. What mattered was that he was finally feeling the weight of his actions. The next few days were a blur. I watched from the sidelines as Emily tried to salvage what was left of her reputation. She reached out to her friends, to family members, trying to patch things together like nothing had happened. She was out of options, but still she tried. But Jared? He wasn't trying to fix anything anymore. His life was spiraling, and there was nothing left for him to salvage. He lost his job, he lost his friends, and his family had completely cut ties with him. The world saw him for who he really was, a coward and a traitor. I watched the train wreck unfold from the comfort of my own home. It was strange watching everything fall apart for them. But I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel any satisfaction either. I just felt relief. Then came the final blow. I received a letter in the mail one day. It was from Jared's lawyer. The letter was official, but it carried one last surprise. Jared was seeking a settlement. Not for any money, but for the damage done to his reputation. He was trying to shift the blame, trying to make himself out to be the victim, just like Emily had tried to do. Couldn't believe it. After everything they had done, after the betrayal, the lies, and the public exposure, Jared was asking for a settlement? He had the nerve to try and avoid the consequences of his actions one last time. I laughed when I read it. Jared had no idea. I wasn't interested in a settlement. I had everything I needed already. The final justice would come in the form of seeing them pay for their actions in a way they couldn't escape. I called my lawyer. "Let's make sure this never happens again. Take everything we've got and put it on the table. If Jared wants a settlement, I'll give him one. But I'm going to make sure it's one he'll never forget." A week later, we had everything in place. The paperwork was filed. The settlement was secured. Jared's reputation was officially destroyed. Emily was left with nothing. She had no control, no way to manipulate the situation anymore. They had lost. I took a step back, looking over everything I had reclaimed. It wasn't just the house. It wasn't just the car. It wasn't the money. It was my life back. The peace I had longed for was finally mine. The day I received the final court ruling, I couldn't help but feel a sense of calm wash over me. It was over. The long months of betrayal, pain, and anger had led to this moment, the moment I finally got my justice. Emily and Jared had no idea what was coming. They were still trying to rebuild their shattered lives. But nothing would ever be the same for them. Their lies had been exposed, their reputations destroyed, and there was no turning back now. I sat in my living room, looking around at everything I had worked so hard for. The home, the car, the money, and for the first time I felt peace. This wasn't just about getting things back. It was about taking control again. I had won this battle not because of rage, but because I had outsmarted them both. The final legal settlement was handed down swiftly. The court had ruled in my favor on every single point. The house, the savings, the assets, everything was returned to me. But that wasn't all. The most satisfying part was knowing that Jared would never recover from this. He tried to manipulate the system, tried to avoid the consequences, but in the end, it didn't matter. The damage to his career, his social standing, and his reputation was permanent. The world had seen him for who he truly was, a liar and a cheat. A few weeks later, I got a final letter from Emily. It was a plea for forgiveness, a desperate attempt to mend what was already broken beyond repair. "I know I've hurt you, Mark," it started. "I can never undo what I did, but I hope one day you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. I'm so sorry for everything. Please, I just want to make things right." I stared at the letter for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond, to somehow ease the burden of what she had done. But the truth was, there was nothing left to fix. She had burned every bridge. She had destroyed the trust, the love, the life we once shared. So I did nothing. I didn't respond. I didn't even acknowledge the letter. She didn't deserve my forgiveness, not after everything she had taken from me. The last piece of the puzzle finally fell into place when I saw the look on Emily's face the last time I saw her in person. She had no fight left in her. No excuses, no lies. She knew she had lost, and she would have to live with that for the rest of her life. For me, it was finally over. The truth had come out, and I had taken back everything they tried to take from me. In the months that followed, life began to look very different. I focused on myself for the first time in a long time. I took care of my business, made new friends, and eventually met someone new. A woman who didn't have a hidden agenda, someone who appreciated me for who I was. And as for Sarah and Jared, they were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. Emily tried to start over, but her reputation had been destroyed. She never fully recovered, and her name was tarnished forever. Jared? He tried to salvage his career, but it was too late. The world had already seen the truth about him. He faded into obscurity. The final months of this journey were quiet. I found peace in the small things. Long walks, time spent with people who actually cared about me, and finally, the freedom to let go of the pain they caused. I no longer needed to watch them suffer. I no longer needed to obsess over the betrayal. The truth had won, and I had won. Thank you for following this journey. If you've enjoyed the story, don't forget to hit that like button, comment, and subscribe for more stories of justice, revenge, and taking back what's yours. What would you have done in my shoes? Let me know in the comments below.